a quick video here on swing technique and the things that I'm working on to keep me sharp. Maybe some of these will help you. Well, obviously, the swing is pretty complicated stuff, and I highly recommend taking lessons. A lot of people, I think, don't really like lessons, and you should try to find somebody who can really help you. But the way, what I'm doing to stay sharp and to stay, with a functional dispersion and trajectory and everything is I look at the three planes in the swing. You basically have a plane that's like on the ground, right? And the way the club moves approaching impact on that plane, right? In the, if you're familiar with the TrackMan, then that's called, obviously, at impact, it's called the club path, right? And in my experience, the way you can fix problems in this plane is just using alignment sticks. So if you practice enough with alignment sticks, you can actually get a lot done, because you will, the eyes actually, if you see the sticks on the ground, if I put them on the ground like this, or just one on the ground, in my case, my eyes are always on the inside, right? So I'm always coming on the inside and hitting a little bit of a draw. So just having visually this stick here actually makes my whole swing direction start turning left. It starts turning it left, and I begin to open my body a little better, get my club more in front of me, right? And it's gonna be easier for me to have a more, just not so much of a glancing blow, but pretty much straight in, right? You wanna make sure you transfer the most amount of energy, and you have a club path of as close as possible to zero, which would be neutral. So alignment sticks, number one, I use it a lot, and it's really just a habit that everyone should have, I think. The second plane, which is important, is the vertical plane, right? Which is all about attack angle and how you actually are coming into the ball. It gets complicated there, obviously, because there are a lot of things that affect that attack angle, which also affect club path, so it becomes a mess very fast, right? But in general, if you are struggling with your attack angle, right, that means you're not consistent with the way your divots are coming out, and the depth of your divots. It's really important, and here I had Danny, and back home in Colombia, Jorge, who were my coaches. They've recommended me to basically have a much better transition and a much more consistent transition at the top. So if you're struggling with a vertical plane and where you hit the ball and you have a lot of inconsistent contact, you really want to make sure that your transition, you're doing the right things, right? In my case, I was staying too far back, and Danny pointed this out, that he has a great phrase, and I recommend you follow him. Golf is not baseball, right? So we have an actual face of the club that we want to make sure we control, right? So if you're not doing that, then you're in trouble, obviously. But that means that your sequence is, sure, it's from the ground up, but there's a lot less separation and just throwing your hips out like people used to think when maybe the efficiency graphs from K-Best first came out. Everyone was trying to just, from the ground up, and the hands were just going away from you. And I have to give that credit to him, Danny, who pointed this out to me, and Jorge then sent me some very cool graphs to corroborate that. So that was very interesting. And the third plane, I think, is key, is one that has been with me my whole life, right? So you got the horizontal plane, very important, right? Alignment sticks. The vertical plane, if you're struggling with that, then make sure you're working on your transition into your left foot before you hit the ball, and there are just a bunch of videos on how to do that well out there. But the last one has been the critical one for me, because I was struggling a lot when I was in college, and thanks to Jorge, I think he told me, there's a lot of inconsistency in the way you load, right, in this dimension, right? Because what happens is when you're jumping too much on the ball, and I started working out in college, so obviously that's what starts to happen when you work a lot in your speed and you don't really know enough about your technique. Um, the way your hands approach the ball at impact, just that way it becomes really inconsistent. So sometimes the hands go high. Sometimes if you stay low enough and around, obviously the hands are going to be low. So if you have access to a TrackMan or to a FlightScope or a radar, make sure the variability in the swing plane variable is very low. Hopefully underneath 1 if you're aiming to play professionally, right? So the moment I realized that it wasn't about, you know, the horizontal plane or the vertical plane in the way the club head was approaching impact, it had a huge effect. So again, alignment sticks for the horizontal plane, transition for the vertical plane, right? And make sure that this transition, you know, so golf is obviously a rotational sport, but make sure that the way you load into the golf ball, right, to generate speed is consistent. Because if you're loading too much and just jumping out, like you see some of the long drive players on tour, or long drive you know, champions and things like that, the way they move their feet out, that means they're obviously using the ground a lot, right? But if you don't do that consistently, then swing plane is going to be inconsistent, and that affects the club face, right? So club face control will suffer a lot. So I got to thank those guys for helping me out, and again, we're getting ready for a tour this summer, and hopefully with those 3 simple planes and 3 simple ideas, we'll be able to take care of the job. All right.
All right.